having faith in your own work is a big challenge, and you know, it's keeping your nerve and holding your nerve when people are telling you that maybe stuff is wrong or that you should do it in a different way. But I've always been, and the people I work with have always been very tight on that. And it's keeping that control, creative control, has been always really super important. And so yeah, protecting that, I guess, has been a challenge. But then, you know, as I've gotten older and made more stuff, I've become more relaxed about it. So it kind of changes over time. I walk around a lot and listen to music, and then think about stories. And I've always done that. I kind of make stuff up in my head and kind of listen to the story and walk around, and then sometimes I go, oh, that might be an interesting story, and then I write it down a little bit, see if that's all right, and then if it can survive that process, then I might write up a bit bigger, and I basically start off with sentences, then I get a piece of paper and I divide it in, I write 1 to 30 on it, 3 times, and then I write the story into that, and if I can get all those 30 bits, those 90 points into it, then it looks like a film, and then I'll write it. But if I can't, then I just don't bother. My rule of thumb is usually just if there's a film I want to see, and I haven't seen it anywhere, then I'll try and make it. There's different genres of cinema, like, you know, cowboy films and sci-fi films and romantic comedies and these kind of things. But there's really other secret genres, and one of them is people in rooms talking, and that can go from, I don't know, Woody Allen to EastEnders, you know, so enclosed spaces are a lot of cinema, really, mostly, unless they're action, like battle sequences or something. All the films except for High Rise have been produced by Rook Films, which is a company that I co-own with Amy Jump and Andy Stark, so I'm involved in everything, you know, so the financing of it and the budgeting of it. There's no kind of friction between any of that, which is rare, you know, in production. I think the filmmaking is always the same, and the pressures are always the same on no budget to high budget, but they've all got to make the money back in some way. So if you make a film for £10,000 and it doesn't make any money, that's quite bad. It's as bad as making one for 10 million and not making any money. You know, that's part of it, because you're obviously not even engaging the audience at that small level. So you've got, you know, so I've really approached them all in the same way. But it's kind of it's more of a high wire act when the money gets larger, but you just don't look down, because it's too scary, because it becomes abstract, the amount of money that's involved in it. But then you've got to think of it in terms of, it's not you spending it, it's part of a production that is actually creating work for everyone else, you know. So you don't feel so insane, like you've just been given. Like if I thought I'd personally spent £5 million making a film, then that might be something I'd be worried about. But when it's like, when you look out and you see all the guys and men and women all working on it and all getting paid to do their thing and doing their very specialist bit of it, you don't feel as responsible somehow, you know. Well, I've always been very collaborative, and I think that you have to be. That's what film is, you know. And it's like, the clue is in the name, you know. I'm a director. I direct and push people into or suggest suggestions, positions to be into. I'm not an autocrat, and I don't tell, you know, specifically, certainly not actors, but within and always the kind of working with the technical crew is always a negotiation. It's not, you know, unless someone's doing something egregiously bad, it's obviously, you know, you have to understand what, I mean, that's why when I started wanting to get into film, I wanted to understand what everyone's jobs were to a degree, so I wouldn't, you know, you get into this situation where people get a bit shouty and demanding, but if they don't know what someone's job is and how hard it is and how long it takes to do it, then they've got no right to do that. In television, I'm a hired hand usually, and I come in and I do my job and get out. But I think with that kind of stuff, it's like you take the pleasures where you can find them, you know. And if you like, you know, on Ideal, which is a show I did for BBC for Baby Cow, it was great not to have to think about the script, you know, in that respect, and be responsible for it. And I just could go with it. And it was also, the style had already been set, so I was working within very tight environments. and controls, which was a kind of, it sounds like it should be not the goal, but it's kind of it's quite liberating that time sometimes. The main advice to anyone who wants to get into film is to make film. It's just to do it and not to take anyone's advice about it, and just, it's certainly not me. I wouldn't listen to a word I say. I would, and that's how I ended up making my first film. I didn't apply for any money. I didn't ask any opinion from anybody, or ask if it was good or bad, or go through any regional funding body, or do any kind of course, or listen to anyone, and we just made the film. And I think that is, you can do that, and it's fine. The technology's there to do it. If you've got a phone, you can make a film now. If you're really on your arse and you don't have access to a smartphone, then that's a problem. But then if you could buy buy a camera off of eBay for, a lot of the old generation SD cameras are like pence now. You can buy a camera for 25 quid if you want one. And a lot of movies are shot on those, and no one blinks an eye. The sound is quite important to get right, as we know up here. And you can have crappy looking visuals, but you can't have bad sound. So you might have to, that might be a barrier to be able to make something, is getting hold of a Zoom or something, or some of those smaller things. But they're 100 quid. So even if you can't afford to buy it, you must be able to. If you think you can make a movie, then you've got to have the ingenuity to blag the equipment as well. So between those two positions, then yeah, you can make your film. There's no, our first film cost £6,000, which is, I know to a lot of people, just a totally unachievable amount of money to get together. But we spent that mainly on hotels for the actors, and food and travel. And if we didn't live in Brighton, we could have not had to do that. So, and I think now, if I made a film now, I can make it a lot cheaper. And my first short films I did when I was unemployed and on the dole, and I think the first short we did was about 12 quid, and the one after that was 25 quid. So the money thing is not a reason. Within film production and like advert production and stuff, they're desperate for people who are sensible, who can work as runners, and you can get a job in that and then work your way through. And it stopped me trying to get work in that way, because I was afraid of, that you had to be a certain type of person to be employed, but the only qualification you need really is to have your head screwed on straight and know how to work hard, which is another thing that barred me from doing it, to be fair. But I don't think there's any, as like I say, if you can cobble together a tiny amount of money to film something and start filming it, and you make something good, you'll go straight through. All of that none of that is a barrier. If it's no good, then you've got a problem, then you probably need to do it again and see if you can make it good enough for the doors to open. But as soon as you make it, there's nobody out there with a great movie that they've made that didn't get through the system. Well, I mean, I wouldn't have had a career if it wasn't for the net, because I used it to distribute my short films at a time when, the time before that, there was only one way of doing it, which was like through the BFI or through film clubs and stuff, and that was all like heavily kind of choked. Not many people got through that kind of narrow channel, but the internet made that, democratized that, so you could, if you put something out and it's good, people will come and look at it, definitely, eventually, but it's different now, and I think it's dangerous for people like me to talk about the internet as like I know what it's like, because when I did it was 10 years ago, or even no longer, like 15 years ago, when it was different, and it changes every 6 months. It's a different shape, a different space, different places to put things. Strategies work in different ways. But I think if you're making stuff that talks to people, then the internet will find a way. It will bubble through.